My name is Russell Spatz. I'm an alcoholic. I'm a member of the Carl Gables group. I just got back from Europe. I was there for about 2.5 weeks, and it's very good to be back. I want to tell you a little something about that deal. But as I got off the plane, and I was like a 12-hour flight kind of thing, and you could look at me at my girth, my size, and I'm 62 years old. I really don't do well on 12-hour flights. And as I landed, I got an email from a friend of mine who wanted me to speak in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. There's a great thing starting over there in Malaysia. I don't know how many people have ever been over there to Malaysia or Bali. It's a 28-hour plane. Respectfully declined it. I'm not. You got to have a younger man doing that kind of stuff. But in any event, it is good to be here. I am the best part of my trip, and I'm going to try to explain this as best I can. And this isn't in any way. I know I'm dealing with alcoholics, so if you want to get pissed off at something, I can't stop you. You can always figure out something to take personally. I mean, if you disagree with me, it has nothing to do with me belittling you or anything like that. I'm just telling my own personal story, just trying to be transparent with you. The best part of my whole trip was landing in Miami, Florida. I was so happy to be back. I mean, I'm not going to go into I could give you a whole hour monologue on Europe and whatever the deal is, and a lot of people go there. And it was my 30th wedding anniversary, and been married for 30 years, and 4 kids and 6 grandkids, and my wife had a great time. There was shopping everywhere. Personally, I don't see why I had to spend that kind of money just to go to Bloomingdale's, but could have taken her right down the street. But in any event, we went all over Italy and Greece and all that stuff, and to give you an idea of what the deal was, I got home and I had lost 10 pounds. So that's a hard thing to do. I mean, it was just the place was not really agreeing with me. And I'll tell you what, I had occasion to go to a bunch of meetings when I was over there. I did one on the 7th step over there, and I try to be as honest as possible. And when you're in an A group, if you're going to be honest, you're going to probably piss people off to a certain extent. I mean, listen, you're not going to agree with everybody. But not everybody's going to understand you or agree with you. And one of the great benefits, I haven't found necessarily to drink in a little over 30 years. One of the great benefits of having this thing sort of work on you and having God work on you and your personality is you get to be able to be yourself and feel comfortable with yourself and not mind it so much if people don't like you. So you can be comfortable in your own skin, and you can say yourself, and you don't have to sit around and obsess about did this one like me, did that one like me, and you can just sort of be honest with yourself and honest with people. And you have to understand. I know there are people there. I mean, God bless them. It's wonderful. When they're sharing how wonderful it is to be in Europe and how great it is to be, and they've saved up all their lives to be in Europe. And so, I mean, they probably either don't understand or don't really want to hear from a guy who says something like this really isn't important to him. You know what I mean? But I was being honest because I'll put it to you this way, and I'll try to, before coming to Alcoholics Anonymous, I was a typical alcoholic. They say our alcoholic life seems the only normal one. And, if you're an alcoholic, listen, I don't know whether we all have the same personality. I personally believe no matter what we look like and what we sound like, we're all basically twins. You know what I mean? We're all basically the same under the skin with a few idiosyncrasies there. And I was one of these guys who I was always waiting. There was always something that's about to happen to make my life okay. I was an if only or an yes party. If only I was making more money. If only my boss treated me. If only I had a girlfriend. If only I had a car. If only instead of $40,000 I was making $60,000. If only something changed circumstantially in my life, or a bunch of things. If I was only living here and there, and you know what happens? A lot of that stuff happens to you, and it's like booze. It's like wonderful for 30 flippin' seconds. Right? What is it? 30 seconds, a minute, 5 minutes, the new girlfriend, the new car, and then it's a used car, and then it's the girlfriend, that you've had for a month already, and then, and then all of a sudden, it's like, if I only had another girlfriend, if I only had a different car, if I only had, and it's a constant thirst and hunger for whatever it is that's going to make you okay, and it's like drinking water, and you can never assuage your thirst. In my life, I was restless, irritable, discontented, and all that stuff. And I knew no way out, no way. And I guess I'm an alcoholic because no woman and no car and no amount of money ever fixed me up just as well as just a few drinks. And that's why I drank. But even that didn't work, and it turned on me. So my whole life is about looking and searching for that thing or whatever it is that's going to make me right or make me feel okay. And by the time I got it, it started happening to me. I didn't even realize I got it. Because you're so discombobulated in here, even as it's happening to you, when you feel something's happening to you, you don't even realize what's happening to you is what you've wanted to happen to you all your life. And so one day, I'm sitting in a Denny's. I used to, if I only had a Playboy Club card. If I only was in, one day I'm sitting in a Denny's, and I'm 6, 7, 8, 10 years sober, whatever I was, with a new guy who I had just taken to his first meeting. And we're having coffee, and it's like 10 o'clock at night, and he says this to me, and it's just me and him. We're talking, and I'm having coffee, and nothing special, and just a couple of drunks at the table talking. And he says to me, he says, well, these meetings are pretty good, but what do you guys do for fun? And I didn't know how to tell him that I was having a great time. And my whole life now is about having a great time every single day just because I'm sitting here with you. I mean, I got to pinch myself that, my life is about people. My life is no longer about things I trust me. When I say, now listen, I'm not perfect, and I'd be lying if I don't want to make it sound like, look, every sainthood, we don't get that, and there are things that'll still rock my boat. But considering from where I used to be, a guy who was grabbing for everything in the world to manipulate the world to be somehow okay and wrest some sort of satisfaction out of that, to an individual who could sit with some guy in Denny's and feel like he's having the greatest night of his life. And I'd even realize, something as that's happening, and somebody would ask me the next day, how was you? Oh, it was great. What'd you do? I sat with a guy in Denny's, you know what I mean? As it was happening to me, I don't even think I realized or understood the significance of what was changing about me. That I was going from somebody who thought things or a substance or something would make me be okay to a guy who was loving on people and was trying to find the thing that I was always really searching for, a spiritual relationship with another person. A spiritual relationship. And our book says, and I didn't even really realize this, it says in the 12 and 12, unless and until an alcoholic accepts his devastating weakness and all its consequences, his sobriety will be precarious of true happiness, he'll find none at all. And we think our weakness is booze, and we don't understand that one of the things that we crave as alcoholics is fellowship. It says, God will show you, envision to you how to create the fellowship you crave. Craving fellowship. Craving belonging to the group, belonging to the crowd, but having to drink in order to be there because you need to have fellowship, but you're scared of the fellowship. So why am I so lonely? Why am I so alone? How can I link up? Why can't I feel like I belong? Why do I feel like I'm so apart and so separate? And you feel that way. And at the same time, the best way to assuage that is to isolate and drink. And somehow you can't stand being alone or lonely. And on the other hand is so the reaction to that is to isolate or to drink and get even more away from people. I mean, it's just a very sick sort of spiritually diseased sort of situation. And all of a sudden at around, whatever it is, 5 years, 10 years, early on, I am getting whatever I need as far as strength and everything without even knowing it, from fellowshipping with my sponsor, from fellowshipping with co-sponsees, from going to meetings. And although I realize I'm feeling better, and that's about as much as I can say, I like going to meetings, I like being with people, and all sorts of stuff, I didn't realize that what a radical change it was working in my life to go from a person who was focused on things to a person that was focused on people. To the extent that wherever I am, the only thing that's really important to me, as other people are looking at the Eiffel Tower and other people are taking photographs of the Colosseum and other people are doing this and that, the only thing that's important to me is God help me bump into another alcoholic. You know what I mean? Or who I'm sitting next to, just like that guy in the Denny's. And so I have a life now where I find that I'm low maintenance. I am like a cheap date. I need absolutely nothing to be okay. Nothing. Except maybe people. And if you know anything about the world, people are sort of like as common as dirt. And so the interesting thing is, as far as, and one of the things that happens, I think if you're an alcoholic and you work in this program and you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, not only being out there to carry this message and carry the gospel and the good news of this message, but also sponsoring people. And, I've been around long enough with 30 years where I have sponsees and I have grand sponsees and great grand sponsees, not so you build up this sort of line of sponsors, guy who says, I'm a great grand sponsor. Oh yeah, who's your sponsor? You build up these fellowship and these lunches and the stuff that you have. Sort of like this is, we all eat dinner beforehand. Then we do this, and I had lunch today with some of my guys, and different fellowships, and you build up this, and that's what sobriety is about. You build up these spiritual fellowships as you're building up your fellowship and your relationship with God, and people become attracted to you, and you become attracted to other people, because it's a program of attraction rather than promotion, and you can sort of tell that guys that are getting this thing, you can sort of look and you see there are other people that want to be with them. Whenever I'm with John, my sponsor over there, he's got like 50, I don't even know how many years. He's got a lot of years. But, and they're always saying, is John going to be there? So you have this, and so you got to understand, as far as vacation for me, I feel like my life is a vacation. So when my wife wants to go away to Europe, because she needs to go to Europe, because if she could only go to Europe, and I'm not putting down my wife, then everything would be okay. Her life would be complete with Europe. You know what I mean? What it means to me is I'm being taken away from my fellowship. It's not a vacation for me. In a sense, although I love to do it for my wife and I'm glad I'm doing it, to a sense, it's like I'm making a sacrifice. Because I would rather be here than in Greece. And I would rather be with you than, and that's the truth. So when I go on these deals, what I'm looking for is I'm not looking for to walk 23 miles and go to the Coliseum and look at dead people. And I'm not, look, I love the History Channel. I love reading about all that stuff. I'm a voracious reader and watcher and all that sort of stuff. But what I'm really looking for is I'm looking to link up with that guy from Denny's, who I can talk to about God, about life, about things. That's what my life is about now. And it makes things so much better. And that's just an attitudinal change that I cannot explain or even make it real for you unless you're there. There are just some things where you say, hey, you just got to be there, And if you're not there, then either you think it's bullshit or it's not real or I'm just kidding you or it's a phony baloney deal and until you get to that place, which some people may never get to. So if I'm with a group of people and I'm telling the truth, and all they want to talk about is the Eiffel Tower and the Coliseum and a bunch of dead graves and stuff like that, which doesn't means, and I'm not putting them down, but it gives me no excitement whatsoever. And I want to talk about just being with people and loving on people and have relationships with people. Given if you're talking to alcoholics, for instance, they may feel like I'm putting them down or I'm making fun of them. I'm not. I'm just telling the truth about my life. That's what my life is about. And you want to know something? I don't want to go back to the way I was. I don't want that deal. I don't want to go back to a way of life where I'm constantly thirsting and searching for something or set of circumstances to make me feel like I'm comfortable in my own skin and I'm worthwhile to being alive on the planet. That I got to somehow justify myself or figure out a reason why I'm as good as. I like it just the way I am right now. Just the way I am right now. And I just want to even get more like that deal. And so, it's good to be back. And really, when I say it's the best part of my deal was to get back, was to be back here with you guys. I mean, I really mean it. Or be anywhere, would be anywhere. Even in Rome or wherever it is, as long as I could connect with people. But you know how it is. You're on the road and you're running around. It's very hard to have the spiritual connections with people that you're bumping into here and there that you have with people that you know in your life and that, for a long period of time. So I'm glad to be here, and it's a good thing, and it has to do with something I want to talk about. At the last minute, I figured it out. Here today about step 6, because we're presumably on step 6, which means I'm going to talk about probably everything but step 6. But I'm going to talk about what, there are certain aspects of step 6 and the steps that I talk about. And as you know, I have a tendency to wander off into the weeds and want to talk about God, and this is not going to be any exception, because I believe the entire book and everything about this is about God and your relationship with God. And if you miss that point, I think you missed the whole deal. You've got a form of religion without power, because the power is in your relationship with God, period, end of story. The whole point about the book, it's very simple. The book says it 6,000 different ways from beginning to end. See to it that your relationship with Him is right, and great events will come to pass for you and countless others. It says it in a million different ways. I'll read about 6 or 7 or 8 of them right now. Many of you have seen. And if you understand the steps in the context of using them as spiritual tools in order to develop that relationship, which is the only thing this deal is about, I think the worst thing in the world would be to be the smartest person in the world about these steps. Be able to recite the book backwards and forward. Know this thing better than anybody else, yet not have a serious, substantial spiritual relationship with God. That's got to be the loneliest deal in the world. How would you'd be out there, you'd sound good, you'd look good, but how would you ever even be able to go up with the, as far as pride is concerned, how would you ever even, you might not even know you're lost, how would you ever even be able to go up to somebody and say, hey, listen, I know the book backwards and forwards, but I don't know God? What would be the point? What's the point? What's the A, B's, and C's? We're alcoholics. We cannot manage our own life. So you can't manage your own life. What's the point of being smart and being great and going out there and trying to figure out things when the book is telling you, he says, being convinced you can't manage your own life. No human power is going to relieve it. Only God could and would if He was sought. What's the point if there is no God? God either is or He isn't. The whole point is about God. So what does that have to do with the 6th step? And I think, and so the way I want to explain these steps and what it means to me now, because you want to know what step 6 is about? It's about attitude. It says step 6, when it comes right down to it, is having the best possible attitude. Attitude to do what? So how do you teach attitude? How can I force it? How can I make somebody hungry? You ever try to make somebody want this program? You can't do it. You can't make somebody want this program. You can't force somebody to want this program. If you want what we have and are willing to go any lengths to get it, that means before you do the steps, it says if you want what we have, then you're ready to take certain steps. You're not even ready until you want what we have, which means you got to have a we. How do you force somebody to have a we? How do you say somebody get a we and you want to have that we? They either do or they don't. They either have an attitude where they want and they desire that deal. They either hear me or somebody to me and say, man, I wish I could have what that guy has. I wish I could do that deal. I don't even know what that deal is. I came in here and I met a group of men, mostly with 15, 20, 25 years. I had no idea what they had. All I knew is I wish I could be like them, and I didn't even know what they were like, except what I saw, I liked, and I knew it wasn't phony, and I wanted it. And now, how do you imagine? I'm just blessed that I had the thirst for that. Some guys have a thirst for women. They go to a meeting and all they see is the gals. They may come up to you and you may sense it, and you may say something like, well, maybe you ought to go to a men's meeting. I says, what do you want to cut out sex? Because all they see, that's what their desire is. Their desire isn't for surprise. Some of them actually make it. But how do you get somebody to have the right desire? Step 6 is about desire. It's about the best possible attitude. And so I want to talk to you about what that attitude is. If step 6 is about an attitude, it might be a good idea to understand what that attitude is about. And how do you get that attitude? What does it look like when you have that attitude? One of the great things about, we think in AA that you can manufacture these attitudes and these steps in people. We go through these little games, these deals. Maybe we can. I don't know. Where, people tell you drive the speed limit and do this and do all that stuff. Like we could somehow put them into like a cookie cutter and have them do all sorts of exercise, and they come out the other end and they have like the 6-step attitude. And they come out, they go through a certain set of things like boot camp, and they have that attitude. I don't know. Maybe you can do that. Maybe you can't do that. Maybe, I like to think there's something at work here, but I know one thing. There are a lot of people that work these steps, pay thousands of dollars and go to treatment centers, get all sorts of sponsors and try this thing as much as they can, and they never get it. That's true, don't you? There's people that are here that never get it. They're hanging around here, they're in and they're out. They'll get 5 years in, but they'll never, and there are other people that just get it. They'll do the same steps, they'll do the same. I wish I could say to you, if you do these steps, the best I could say is if you don't do them, you're probably going to drink and you're not going to be happy. I can't even tell you, listen, I'm glad they could say you work these steps and you won't drink and you'll be happy for the rest of life and you'll get that relationship. I can't say that. I've been around here long enough to know that you can work. I've seen guys do step circuits, be circuit speakers, and not get this thing. You can do every one of these things, and at the other end, the tail end, end up not experiencing much of heaven and being rocketed in the fourth dimension of existence, which you have not even dreamed. You need to make a decision. Bill Wilson talked about emotional sobriety, the next frontier, about not only the drinking, but our being involved in unhealthy relationships and dependencies. You got to make a decision whether or not this is about just not drinking for you, or whether it's about a whole different deal, what they're talking about in this book. So I want to talk a little bit about the concept of the relationship with God thing that I'm talking about and how it works into the 6th step. And maybe, to me this is like connecting dots. Somehow, some way you hear this enough times in different ways, you know what I mean? And one day it sort of snaps and you just sort of see clearly the connection between the God thing and the 6th step and the attitude. You just see it and you want it and you know that's what it is, and then you go for it. Or you're just sort of drifting around. So let me just read a couple of things. Listen. Hey, the 5th step and the 4th step come before the 6th step. Is that correct? Okay. I want to read you something. From chapter 6. Chapter 6 is where they have step 5. They start going into step 5. It's right after step 4. I want to read you something. I want you, and I like reading this stuff. I have people come up to me and say, I really like what you said when you said this. I said, oh, you mean when I read from the big book? Listen, you can go very far in Alcoholics Anonymous if you can just read from the big book. I know everybody's read the big book, and we've all read the big book, but you need to understand something about alcoholics. It's like that old story I tell about how my first wife said, if you come home drunk one more time, I'm leaving you. If you come home drunk one more time, I'm leaving you. I said, I heard it. I walked out the door. I got in my car. First light, I said, what the hell do you mean by that? Later on, I found out after I came home drunk that what she meant was that if I came home drunk one more time, she was going to leave me. She meant exactly what she said. Well, the point is, if you're an alcoholic, what I now know is being an alcoholic is whenever an alcoholic hears, sees, or is told something he doesn't like, it confuses him. And he skips over it. So you could read this book. You could read the whole 164 pages, and when it gets to this stuff about the God stuff and the relationship stuff and all that sort of stuff, if you don't understand it, if you don't like it, you skip over it. And you think you've read it. You go, yeah, I read all 164 pages. And says, well, what about that thing God did? Well, that's because you read certain parts that you understand, and you eat those, and you like those, and then the other parts, oh, well, forget that one, or I'll take this one, I'll take that one, which is okay. We all do it. But then one day you're at a meeting and somebody reads something from the big book and say, man, that's powerful. Where did you get that? And I said, well, sometimes once, So it's like, so I'm just going to read a few things. This has to do, when you think about it, it has to do it with the God thing. And how important the relationship is with God. How important it is to develop it. You have to be convinced how it's got to be the bedrock thing. It says this is the archway of freedom that they're talking about. Everything depends upon that relationship. So let me read this, okay? This is chapter 6, into action. Having made our personal inventory, that's the fourth step, what shall we do about it? Okay, now you did this fourth step, and you guys, a lot of people think, well, it has to do with psychiatry or figuring out who you are and what you are, as if that's going to ever help. Never did before. Having made our personal inventory, what shall we do about it? Now, here's what they say. This is not me talking, so if you have a complaint, you got to write New York. It says, we have been, listen, what do you think this book is about? You think this book is about getting you smarter? You think this is a book about getting you so you really understand yourself? There's a thing about Roland Hazard in here, where you remember that's the guy who put himself under Carl Jung, the greatest psychiatrist, and he says to himself, here's the line. It says, having now put himself under Carl Jung and knowing the inner workings of his mind and what makes him work, drinking was impossible. And then the next line is, nevertheless, in 3 weeks he was drunk. And he went to the doctor and he said, I can't stop drinking. I know all about it. And he says, here and there, once in a while there is a solution. It's a psychic change. It's a spiritual one. And he talked to him about God. It says, ideas, emotions, and attitudes of these men are suddenly cast to one side and they become dominated by a whole different set of ideas, emotions, and attitude. So he thought that the answer was being smarter or learning more by himself, and Dr. Young said that's not the answer at all. And in chapter to the agnostics, which is the only chapter written to the agnostics, which basically says you got to get over it, this kind of thinking has to be abandoned, it says if a mere code of morals or a better philosophy of life would have saved us, we would have been sober long ago. But such codes and moral philosophies, because we were without power. We had to find the power, and that means we wrote a book, and that means we got to talk about God. The whole thing's about God. And so I have people come to me and says, well, just do the next right thing. Well, that's a philosophy. That's bullshit. Listen, it sounds terrible, like mother and apple pie. Of course you want to do the next right thing. Are you an alcoholic? You can't. Don't you get what powerlessness is all about? You can't do the next right thing. You could try to do it like you're in jail, but you're going to screw up over and over again unless you understand the only way you could ever make the right choice to do the next right thing is with the power of God working in your life. You are powerless. There is one who has all power. That one is God. May you find him now. Otherwise, the book would be all about, we'd get rid of the God thing. We'd just say, just the next right thing. Follow the rules. Don't drink. Go to me. It's not about that. It sounds good, because if you keep on saying do the next right thing, then you don't have to talk about God, which nobody wants to talk about anyway. Because it's embarrassing and people laugh at you, and that's the other thing we got. We worry about what other people think about us. Trust me, if you can get $1 million and all the sex in the world for loving Jesus, everybody in here would be Jesus freaks. If Brad Pitt came out the other day and said, if every movie star said we love Jesus, we'd all be sitting here talking about Jesus. Jesus wouldn't be a dirty word. If you don't think this is all about what other people think about me, and I don't want people to laugh about me, you don't understand anything about alcoholism and about who and what we really are. This is all about worrying about what other people think about you. That's all it is in Alcoholics Anonymous. Alcoholics are followers. If they're in a party where they're doing cocaine, they do cocaine. If they're drinking margaritas, they drink margaritas. If they're drinking beer, they never get it mixed up. They're always watching what the other people are doing so they can belong. We know in Alcoholics Anonymous, if you mention the word Jesus, people get mad at you and they laugh at you and they say, what are you, some sort of idiot and everything? So we don't talk about it because we're scared. Because our whole life is riddled with fear of what other people think about you. If you're lucky, maybe you'll get rid of that thing. Maybe the promise will really work. Fear of people in economic insecurity will leave you, and then you can talk about it any way thing you want to talk about it, and you don't worry about it because you figure out 30 years they can't kick you out anyway. What are they going to do with you, right? Who wants to live a life where you get to the end of your life and your whole life was lived based upon, will they like me if I do this, if they won't like me? You're not even living your life. You're living somebody else's life. It's pathetic. Having made our personal inventory. So why do we do these things? So why are we doing these steps? Why is this thing? Why do we do this step? Why is the attitude important? What is this whole book? Is it about getting smarter? Is it about getting brighter? Having made our personal inventory, what shall we do about it? Here's the answer. Here's what they say. You ready? This is not me. It says, we have been trying to get a new attitude. You ready? A new relationship with our Creator. And to discover the obstacles in our path. It's all about a new relationship with our... See to it that your relationship with Him is right, and great events will come to pass for you and countless others. Now, where else do they say these things? How about this? We in our turn sought the same escape with all the desperation of drowning men. What seemed at first a flimsy reed has proved to be the loving and powerful hand of God. A new life has been given us, or if you prefer, a design for living that really works. Having to do with a relationship with God. Hey, how about this one? If what we have learned and felt and seen means anything at all, it means that all of us, whatever our race, creed, or color, are the children of a living Creator with whom we may form a relationship upon simple and understandable terms as soon as we are willing and honest enough to try. Is that clear enough for you? How about this one? What do you think a good AA talks about? You think it's about a drunken log? Hey, listen, I like drunken logs. Nothing wrong with a drunken log. Do you think that's what an AA talk is about? Further on, clear-cut directions are given showing how we recover. These are followed by 42 personal experiences. Each individual in the personal stories describes in his own language and from his own point of view the way he drank, the way he got drunk, how many times he went to jail, the way he established his relationship with God. Listen, I'm just reading from our material. You don't have to get mad at me. I'm just reading from this is what it says in the book. How about, what do you think they mean by that? This is like the two psychiatrists that cross each other. One says hi, the other says, I wonder what he meant by that. Sometimes what they mean by what they say is exactly what they say. Sometimes it means exactly what they say. How about this? You ever hear these people say, well, if I had heard that when I had come in, I would have walked out. If somebody talking about, well, listen, you didn't have the same disease I had. Because I'm sure they were talking about God all over the place. I didn't walk out because I didn't want to drink. Some people need to walk out. It is not a matter, this is in working with others. It is not a matter of giving that as a question, but when and how to give. That often makes a difference between failure and success. The minute we put our work on a service plane, the alcoholic commences to rely upon assistance rather than upon God. He clamors for this or that, claiming he cannot master alcohol until his material needs are cared for. Nonsense. Nonsense. Some of us have taken very hard knocks to learn the truth. Job or no job, wife or no wife, we simply do not stop drinking so long as we place dependence upon people ahead of dependence upon God. Burn the idea in the conscience of every man. That sounds pretty serious. Burn the idea into the conscience of every man that he can get well regardless of anyone. The only condition that he trusts in God and clean house. Let no alcoholic say that he cannot recover unless he has his family back. This just isn't so. In some cases, the wife will never come back for one reason or another. Remind the prospect that his recovery is not dependent upon people. It is dependent upon his relationship with God. That's not me talking. That's the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. If you have a problem with that, you don't have a problem with me. You have a problem with AA. At least be honest. Say, you like the meetings, you like the coffee, you like the people. You just don't want to do AA. So if you drink or you drug or you feel crappy about yourself or you're living a life of quiet desperation, don't blame AA. Don't say AA doesn't work. Just say, to AA, you just didn't want to do it because you didn't like the God thing. At least to be honest with yourself. And maybe one day you'll wake up and say, why didn't I like that thing? Why didn't I follow directions? Why was I so obstinate? Why was I so stubborn? Why wouldn't I surrender? Abandon yourself to God as you understand God. Admit your faults to Him and to your fellows. Clear the way the wreckage of the past. We shall be with you in the sunshine of the Spirit. Finally, and here's the last thing before I get into step 6, and I have time to I'm actually in step 6. But you're only going to perceive what you perceive. You're going to be, for some people there's going to be a step 3, for some people it's going to be a step 12, it's going to be whatever it's going to be. Here it is. It says right here if you go to 62, page 62, one of my favorite pages. Selfishness, self-centeredness, that we think is the root of our troubles. Driven by 100 forms of fear, self-delusion, self-seeking, self-pity. We step on the toes of our fellows, they retaliate. Sometimes they hurt us, seem without propagation. We find that sometimes in the past we have made decisions based on self, later put in a position to be hurt. So our troubles we think are basically of our own making. They arise out of ourselves, and the alcoholic is an extreme example of self-will-run riot, though he usually doesn't think so. Above everything, we alcoholics must be rid of selfishness. We must, or it kills us. God makes that possible. And there seems often no way of getting it without God's help. And then later on it says, this is the how and why of it. You ready for this? This is the how and why of it. First of all, we had to quit playing God. It didn't work. Next, we decided here and after this drama of life, God was going to be our director. He is the principal. We are his agents. He is the father. We are his children. Most good ideas are simple. Like my wife said that simple thing. Come home drunk one time, I'm leaving you. Remember how simple that was? I got to the red light. I said, what the hell does she mean by that? You know, there's a lot of people that read this thing. It says, most good ideas are simple. And this concept was the keystone to the new and triumphant arch to which we passed to freedom. You know, there are some people that read that and say, what the hell do they mean by that? And they drink and drug for the rest of their lives and they die and they never get happy because, you know something? Because they're constantly saying, what the hell do they mean by that? Because as simple as it is, they don't want to do it, so they don't want to understand it. Because they don't want to go there. They want to figure out a different way of doing it. When sincerely took such a position, all sorts of remarkable things followed. Now, you think they're talking about step 3 here. They're talking about step 6. I'm going to show you where they're going to talk about step 6. I'm going to meld this right into step 6. When sincerely took such a position, what's the position? Trusting and relying upon God, a relationship with God. All sorts of remarkable things follow. You want to have remarkable things happen in your life? Or you just want to be one of these guys with 14, 16 years sober and somebody says, how you doing? You say, hanging in there. Hanging in there. 14 years of this bullshit and I'm hanging in there. And listen, I'm not stuck on the muzzle of the gun. He provided what we needed if we kept close to Him and performed His work well. Established on such a footing. What footing? The footing with you trust and rely on God. We became less and less interested in ourselves, our little plans and designs. More and more we became interested in seeing what we can contribute to life. As we felt, that's what we become interested in. When you become God-focused, focused on Him, you become focused on what? You become focused not on the Eiffel Tower, but on the people in the tower. A godly man, a man who's focused on this, who's doing this thing, is less interested in the car and more interested in the people in the car. He's interested in the guy in den. That's what he wants to be. He wants to be with the action where the people are. Where he can talk about this stuff. You know what Bill Wilson said? What the golden idea was? Bill Dotson says, the Lord's been so wonderful to me, curing me of this terrible disease that I got to keep talking about it and telling other people. He was so excited. More and more we became interested in seeing what we could contribute to life as we felt new power flow in, as we enjoyed peace of mind, as we discovered we could face life successfully, we became conscious of His presence. We began to lose our fear of today, tomorrow, the hereafter. We were reborn. If that's not happening to you, you know why? Because it's just not happening to you. Because it has something to do with that relationship deal. Doesn't mean it won't happen to you. But don't look for it to happen to you because you're going to get real smart on the steps. Or you're going to really, don't look for it to be real. It's going to happen to you because a lot of people are going to pat you on the back. Or you become friendly or popular. Don't look for it to happen to you because you're going to get things in your life. Or because you memorize the big. Don't look for that to happen because that's not going to do it. Because that has nothing to do with that. It's a whole different deal. We are now at step 3. Many of us said to our Maker, and then goes to the 3rd step prayer, which I won't repeat now. Now here comes the 6th step. Now you don't think it's the 6th step, but it's the 6th step, and I'm going to read it to you. After you do the prayer, it says this. Most people know the 3rd step prayer, right? But they don't know the line right after the 3rd step prayer. They don't know the line right after the 3rd step prayer because that's a skipper. Trust me, that line's a skipper. You get to that sentence after the 3rd step prayer, you skip over that sucker. Yeah, that's nice. Let's go on to the next one. Here's the line after the 3rd step prayer. I want to know how many people have ever been to a meeting where they talk about doing this. You haven't been to one. Trust me. Maybe one of mine. We thought well before taking this step. How many people have done the 3rd step? Raise your hands. Oh, well, then you've done that. Then this is your deal. Then this is your deal. The line after the 3rd step is your deal, right? We thought well before taking. Then not only am I here with alcoholics, I'm here with people that even more than alcoholics, people who are in the fellowship of the Spirit. You see, the only requirement for membership in Alcoholics Anonymous is the desire to stop drinking. But there's a different requirement for the fellowship of the Spirit. Just not into the drink does not get you into the fellowship of the Spirit. That's a whole different deal. We thought well before taking this step, making sure that we were ready, that we could at last abandon ourselves utterly to Him. So your whole life and focus is about God and your relationship with Him, and nothing else matters. It's the number one thing in your life. Well, if you took the 3rd step and you did this, that's the deal. That's what that means. Unless you just sort of skipped over that one. Or didn't realize it was there because it was just too heavy for you. Now, does that mean there's something wrong with you? No. You know, I didn't out of the womb get this thing. Listen, it's all bullshit. I'm probably wrong. It's just something for you to think about. See, the problem is I can shove it into your brain, but the only problem is now I can't take it out. It's there. And some of you are going to figure this thing out one day, and some of you aren't. And that's just the way it's going to work. And I'm not in control of that deal. So why does that have anything to do with the sixth step? Now remember that, I want you to read this. We thought well before taking this step, making sure that we were ready, that we could at last abandon ourselves utterly to him. You know what it sounds to me? It sounds kind of fanatical to me, doesn't it? Sounds kind of crazy. Sort of like Al-Qaeda-ish, to, like a little wild, like these guys are, blowing themselves up. This is like wild shit, Abandon yourself utterly to God, Allah Akbar, whatever that thing is, These are, we're talking about, okay, this is step 6. This is the step that separates the men from the boys. Now, I don't know. I don't know what that deal is, but I think I'd rather be on the man part than the boy part. And apparently there's some sort of separation because that's what they say. And this is how they decided. This is the standard they use in deciding who are the men and who are the boys. Here's their standard. So declares a well-loved clergyman. All those people in AA that put down organized religion? You think that's AA, right? That's not AA. You know what that is? When anybody puts down religion in AA, you know what that is? That's the sickness. Because you see, what AA's attitude towards religion is, we lose all prejudice, even against organized religion. We begin to see where religious people are right. Bill Wilson's greatest sponsors, spiritual sponsors, were Ed Dowling, who was a priest, and Sam Shoemaker. AA has never been anti-religion. It's always been in favor of organized religion, Just because you hate it or alcoholics get pinned by it or everything, they even encourage membership in religion. So you hear somebody, I don't care if he's got 30 years, 40 years, putting down the Roman Catholic Church or this thing or that thing. He's not talking AA. He's talking about his prejudice, which he hasn't left, or his resentment, which he has against organized religion. He's still got that sickness deep down inside of him. So don't ever think that has anything to do with Alcoholics Anonymous. That's just some other guy who's been sober for a while, who's just pissed off and wants to vomit all over you. Messages that are not in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, that are completely opposite of the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. And if you're just young and stupid enough, or brand new in this thing, you might think that's AA, and you might think, and you'll start going around thinking you're not supposed to like religion or like religious people, or religion is somehow bad. When in the book, when Bill Wilson is first brought this by Every Thatcher says to him, he says, I've got religion. And he told me a simple religious ideal. Well, religion was never bad. They were reading the Bible all through this thing before this deal. It only got bad in the last 20 years when we got cool. This is the step that separates the men from the boys. So declared a well-loved clergyman who happens to be one of AA's greatest friends. He goes on to explain that any person capable of enough willingness and honesty to try repeatedly step 6 on all his faults without any reservations whatsoever has indeed come a long way spiritually and is therefore entitled to be called a man who is sincerely trying to grow in the image and likeness of his own Creator. Is sincerely trying to grow and focus and be in the image and likeness of his own Creator. That's an attitude. It's sort of close to the attitude of, what does it say? Abandon yourself utterly to him. It's that attitude, and it runs all through the book. It's the attitude of these people. It's the attitude of these A's. It's the attitude of a successful alcoholic, a person in Alcoholics Anonymous. It runs throughout the steps. And then later on step 6, it says the following. So step 6, we're entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character, is AA's way of stating the best possible attitude one can take in order to make a beginning on this lifetime job. For what purpose? For what purpose would you have these things removed? For what purpose would you have these defects? Just so you can say, well, I'm a saint, or I'm wonderful, or look how good I am? Well, the purpose, once again, is stated in chapter 6. Having made our personal inventory, which has to do about defects, what shall we do about it? We have been trying to get a new attitude, a new relationship with our Creator, and to discover the obstacles in our past. Because all these things that we're trying to get rid of are obstacles to our relationship with Him. And therefore, since our relationship to Him is spiritual, and it's the only thing that gives us the ability to feel okay about ourselves on the planet without the need for any additional anything. I don't need to be, I don't need the extra options on the car anymore. I don't need any extra thing in my life to feel okay. I don't need any accoutrements. I don't need the pocketbook. I don't need the wallet. I don't need the deal. I don't put down material things. It says in the book, what is it? When we get to step 7, it says we don't want to deprecate material things, but nobody's made a worse try of it. I don't need it. But you want to know something? I don't need it to be okay with myself and to feel right with the world or anything like that. And so so this relationship, as we develop this relationship with God, we find that we feel right about ourselves in the world, like the Apostle Paul said. It says, I've learned to be content in all things. Don't you want that promises deal? No matter how far down, don't you want the new freedom? You want the old freedom? Or do you want the new freedom? Do you want the new happiness? No matter how far down the scales, you want to feel good about yourself. You want to lose fear of people and of economic. You want all that stuff, or you just want to play games. What do you want? That's what this thing is all about. Wanting this stuff so you can have not only relationship with God and close relationship with God, but that means that you get this. That means an incredible relationship and being able to link up with other people. Not everybody in the world, but other people. Because there are other people that are into this deal. They're part of the fellowship of the Spirit. You're going to run into some of them. It says you're going to run into some of them. Do you know what it's like to run into those people that are into this deal? You know, one of the things I say, tomorrow morning I go to a 7:30 Bible study. When I was 15 years sober, somebody said, you ever been to a Bible study? I said, to myself, I said, I'm Jewish. I don't go to Bible studies. You know, like Jews don't study the Bible, you know. And, well, what it really was is I was scared. I started thinking about my Aunt Joan, who had been dead 10 years. What would she think? You know, I mean, that's what happens. That's what alcoholics do. They think about what dead people will think about them. You know what I mean? Alcoholics think about this crap. You know, they think about, 90% of the shit you're not doing in your life that's probably good for you. You're not doing because you're worried about what some goofball who's not even paying your Visa bill, you think what he might think about you when he's not even thinking about you. He's thinking about somebody else. And that's how we run our lives. And we think it's okay because we're so petrified that somebody's going to judge us or laugh at us. So I started going to this Bible study. So I've been going to this Bible study for 15 years. Now, of course, what I discovered after I went to the Bible study is they talk about the same stuff we talk about in AA. Because it's all the same stuff, you know. It's just the Bible. Everything is, there's no new sins, no defects of character, just different words. It's the same stuff, same people, same personalities, everything. Only these guys are a bunch of guys that are at like 80, 90. That's where I met my sponsor. He's got 53 years, Baptist preacher. You know what I mean? But these guys, the only difference is, it's like AA. They study the same stuff, but everybody's on the same page as far as the God thing the God thing is concerned. There ain't nobody that has a problem with that. We may all. It's always God as you understand them. Even if it's Jesus as you understand them. You know what I mean? But the bottom line is there's nobody, we're all on the same page. Do you have any idea what it's like? Do you have any idea what it's like to be with a group of men or a group of women or a group of people where there's no problem with the third step? There's nobody in the back room saying, I don't want to hear that bullshit. You know, I don't want to hear about that. You know what it's like to be with a fellowship of people that are doing this stuff that we're doing here, but are on the same page as that deal. They're believers and they have faith. It's a powerful deal. And I'm not putting down AA. You want to know something? The big book encourages that deal. To grow. Because we're supposed to grow in the maintenance. And to grow in our spiritual condition. It's an incredible, you want to be involved in the fellowship. That's who you want to fellowship with. In the next 5 years, what I've learned, I told is the man and woman you're going to be in the next 5 years is going to depend on the people you hang out with and the books you read. And the books you read are going to depend on who you hang out with. What you put into your brain is going to depend upon who, if you're having a problem in your life, why don't you look at who you're hanging out with? Why don't you look at who you're looking at and who you're listening to and who you're trying to be with and then what you're feeding yourself with and then what your attitude is like. Are you hanging out with people when you leave them, you feel like you're walking on a cloud, like you've just touched something or been with something or learned something, or are you walking away from people feeling lousy? But you keep on going back to the same people over and over again because alcoholics do that. They get relationships with toxic people. And for some reason they can't leave them, and they just keep on going back to the same bullshit over and over again. So it's part of their alcoholism. Just as much a part of because our alcoholism centers in our mind, not our body. Now, that's what you got to ask yourself. And that's what this thing is all about. And as this relationship with God, it's a natural thing to me. As this thing grows in me, I didn't even realize, this stuff works on such a subliminal level, really. Because as you don't even think about this stuff half the time. I know there's sort of these exercises we do and everything where you really actually think you're doing the steps and doing the stuff, but how much of this stuff really with me works undercover? Like on a daily basis, I just sort of think about how I'm acting. Think about, what I said. Think about whether I'm thinking about God. I'm thinking about God. I mean, I got to tell you something, I think about God all the time. I think about God in the car, and I drive up, and I got to tell you something. I'll just be honest with you. I tend to hang out with people. I don't hang out with people that put God down. I don't hang out with people that put church down. My friends, it doesn't mean, listen, I'll go to the most sordid place in the world. I have nothing against atheists, agnostics. I'll talk to them. I'm in Alcoholics Anonymous. I'll talk to anybody. It doesn't matter. I'll love on anybody. But, the people I choose to hang out with, that I hang out with, believe the way I believe. They don't have to be Christian. They can be Jewish. They can be Muslim. They can be anything. But they're believers. And I hang out with these people. And I drive up here with 4 guys. And we're listening to, spiritual music. And we're talking about God. And I'm thinking about, when you talk about God to a lot of people, and I'm thinking about God. I'm thinking, what I find myself naturally doing? I start checking on myself. How am I doing? What am I saying? What kind of person I am? You know what I mean? Isn't that all 6 step? Isn't that all an attitude? Isn't that all a 6-step attitude? How many times when you were out there drinking, running, raping, were you sit around and think, what kind of person are you? Are you being a decent person? Would God be proud of you? Would God be embarrassed with you and everything like that? As opposed to that son of a bitch. Who does he think he is? I'll get him. They don't understand who they're dealing with. All that sort of stuff. And as I'm thinking, and it's not like a guilt sort of thing where I feel guilty. As I'm thinking about how I want to be the kind of man God wants to be. I want to, what he says, image and growing likeness of my Creator. What I need to work on. As I'm thinking about this stuff, even without even trying to think, it's just sort of, this stuff is sort of coming. Isn't that all a 6-step attitude? And it just sort of comes to you. Where does it come to me from? Does it come to me? Do you think I sit there and I say, well, now I'm going to do the 6th step? Now I'm going to think of the 6th. No, you know where it comes to me? It comes to me because when you focus on God and you have a relationship with God and He's just as real to me and I believe He's there and He loves me and He wants me to do the right thing. He's just as real to me as Jeff is real to me right there. He's just as real to me. You just naturally think, well, how does God want me to be? Am I the man He wants? You just think that way because He's part of your life. Like He's just another person because He's part of your life. I mean, how many people have you linked up with in your life that have led you down the wrong path? How many people have you linked up in your life have got you in the shit can and got you doing the worst things and feeling horrible at yourself and you thought nothing about it? And even people have said, don't stay around with that person. And they've gotten you lower and lower and lower and lower, and yet you stay with these people. And here you have a God who loves you, who the book's saying get close to. Remarkable things will happen to you. And all you'll be doing is thinking how you want to grow in His image and likeness. And you want to be a good person. You want to love on other people. You want to try to help other people. And you don't want to talk about Him and you don't want to be with Him. Because why? Because you'd rather hang out with the crap you used to hang out with? And you think you're somehow cool because of that? You think it's like uncool to have faith in God? But it's cool to hang out with the crap you hang out with? You think that's a cooler way of life? You think that's working for you? Some of you guys are going to find out, this kind of stuff. Listen, I know I get a little intense sometimes. This is a serious disease. I don't care. It's just an AA meeting. We're going to all leave from here. This ain't. I don't think the average AA meeting is like this, is it? It isn't, is it? It's not like this. I know that. I know that because I do enough meetings, so I see the craziness in people's faces when they're listening to me. They're listening to me and they're going, this is what they're doing. They're going, this isn't AA. They know one thing. They know whatever I'm saying, it's not AA. Because they've been to AA meetings, and AA meetings are not like this. Nobody gets wounded. It doesn't hurt anybody, and it's painless. You know what I mean? And nobody says anything that makes you think. You're just sort of numb with excitement. You know what I mean? That you think you've done something, No, this is AA. This is AA. Great depth and weight. This is what AA is about. It's unfortunate that it's been watered down over the years. So thank you very much. God bless you.